Hello, everyone, and welcome to our final presentation of the day. We have Janine Dallow here. Janine has been a wild horse advocate since 2016. She grew up in Cape Cod and has a BA in English from the University of Vermont and a certificate in advertising from the New England School of Art and Design. Um, in September of 2024, Janine made a major life change. She left the security of family and friends in Santa Barbara and headed 14 hours north to Surprise Valley, California, where her main focus is the wild horses and wilderness known as the Carter Horse Reservoir, HMA. Her intent is to educate herself and others by immersion in the issues surrounding the wild horses. So welcome, Janine. And just as a reminder to everybody, your video and mics are all muted. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we'll try to get to them at the end of Janine's presentation. Janine also did put a couple links in the chat box already too. So feel free to look at those. And I can also add that to, if you want me to add it to your website like we did for Cecilia's, I can do that too. So, all right, thank you.
All right, thank you. And thank you everyone who's watching live and who might be watching later. Um, I'm just gonna start. So I have for 4 years been visiting the Carter Reservoir herd management area. But a year ago, September, I moved up there. So I work part-time in order to be able to go out every day and visit the horses. So it's been an incredible experience to see them every day throughout all the seasons. And you'll see the title here is Carter Reservoir HMA, New Year's Lake HA, and it will become more apparent as to why those are both there. Also, so you know, at the bottom it says Janine Dallow, Seen and Heard Wild Horses, and I created Seen and Heard Wild Horses for social media accounts. So that's where you could go to see all of my photos.
Janine, we don't
Yes.
see your screen share.
Oh no. Yeah. Do you see me?
We see you. So I
Oh, I
think you have
didn't
to
even
screen
know
share
that.
again.
I didn't think anyone could see me that whole time. Okay, so I'm gonna hit share. Share. There.
Yep, there you
Now do
go.
you see it?
Yes.
Okay, I don't know how to erase the sidebar there. Oh no, I hit play. All right, now can you see it?
Yes, we can.
Cool. All right, so here's the beginning. I'm going to start by saying there's ancient genetics out there. This is information I got off the web. So I listened to Cecile's talk this morning, and I really appreciate having gotten to know her a little bit. And it seems like it's just coming down to the wording that people are using. But according to the internet, horses are native to North America. The genus Equus, which includes all modern horses, donkeys, and zebras, evolved on the North American continent millions of years ago. The species Equus caballus, which includes modern horses, also originated in North America and migrated back and forth into Asia and beyond. Um, while colonial science traditionally purported a total extinction of the modern horse on this continent, during the late Pleistocene extinction event, updated science has closed the gap of their supposed local extinction to about 4,000 years. It's also very important to note that many indigenous cultures maintain that the modern horse has persisted here in North America all along. The photos in the background there, you'll see I've included a lot of these Cecile took, but these are Soraya horses. Over here, we have the Tarpins. Down in the right corner is the Przalski horses. And then in the bottom left, that's a Carter Reservoir horse. Um, so now if I want to go to the next one, it's not moving. Okay, evolution of the wild. Um, Survival of the fittest. Nature knows best. In wilderness areas, wildlife populations are maintained through key natural processes, including predator-prey loops, habitat, resource availability, ecological succession, and connectivity. Genetics are determined by survival of the fittest. Whatever doesn't serve the species gets filtered out. These are all images I took of Carter Reservoir horses and New Year's Lake horses. Having lived in that area for the last year, I hear from the ranchers, some of the ranchers are of the opinion that the horses that exist around them are old ranch horses that were let loose. But in my opinion, from what I've seen, there are some ancient genetics, and I believe that even if there had been some more domestic breeds let loose at some point, I think that nature has filtered out whatever is not needed. Political classification. When it comes to classifying species, the classification of horses carries serious implications for legal protection and land management policies. Scientific evidence confirms the wild horses of North America today are the same species that evolved here. In fact, many scientists and conservation groups classify wild horses of America as a reintroduced native species. Europeans classify horses as native North American species. And that I know because I've been in contact with Wouter Helmer of the Rewilding Europe, and he himself has said publicly that the horses did evolve here. The legal term used by the US Congress in the Wild Horse and Burro Act is horses. So even Congress labels them as wild horses. Still, and yet, politics over science, the US Bureau of Land Management often classifies wild horses as non-native, invasive species, or feral. Here I have put in a graphic that was created by Heather Hellier of Save Our Wild Horses. The background is something I put in. I shouldn't have put that in this Keep Them Wild, but Heather did this great graphic where she's listed all the herd management areas as they were originally designated to protect wild horses. Let me just read this. So, the Wild and Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act, signed by President Nixon in 1971 to protect America's wild horses from extinction. The act designated herd management areas, HMAs, in places where wild horses and burros were found and entrusted the BLM with maintaining the herds at viable numbers, also known as AMLs. People don't realize, but those AMLs were set with heavy input from the local ranchers who also use that land to graze their private livestock. Instead of maintaining this land for the wild horses and burros, the United States, BLM, has actually zeroed out approximately half of the HMAs and redesignated them as herd areas, HAs, which are areas no longer managed for wild horses and burros. So the graphic there on the left, everything that's red used to be managed for horses. Now those are considered HAs where they've zeroed out or they intend to zero out the horses. The BLM funds this decimation with federal tax dollars, our taxes, and they pay private contractors to round up the horses, and then they pay wealthy landowners to hold them indefinitely. A lot of people ask why, and my response is follow the money. Public interest groups, powerful lobbies who use public land for private profit. And unfortunately, the area that I've been concentrating on is next on the chopping block. So in April of last year, the BLM came out with this environmental assessment called the Carter Reservoir Buckhorn Coppersmith Wild Horse and Gather Plan. So what they've approved and what they're just waiting on funding to do to move forward with is they plan to helicopter round up all of the horses that I've been studying and documenting. They right now estimate them at a population of 400 horses on over 300,000 acres of land. They plan to remove all of them and then only return 25 to 35 horses after they've been treated with chemical birth control. The reasons that they give are one, that the horses are overpopulated, they're over AML. Number two, that the horses are using more than their allocated forage. Number three, that the horses are damaging riparian areas, wetlands, and on and on. Oh, and safety. They say that it's a public safety hazard, which I'll talk about later. It's also important to note that the BLM in their report says adjustments to livestock grazing permits is outside the scope of this assessment. So they only talk about horses when they talk about damage of public lands. They don't consider the cattle or livestock. So this is to orient folks to where the area is that I'm talking about. The Carter HMA / New Year's Lake HA. It's located in the northeast corner of California on the border of Nevada and Oregon. It actually extends into Nevada. So then on the right, you'll see outlined in pink or magenta is the New Year's Lake HA. That's the original herd area for all these horses. This much smaller area is called the Carter Reservoir HMA. So back when, I'll just go on to the next slide. And I'll try to provide all these slides to people. So if they want to read them in depth later, they can do that. Okay. So this talks about biodiversity. So on the left, again, here you'll see this pink area is the New Year's Lake HA, and the little area is the Carter Reservoir HMA. The base map here was made by Western Watersheds. And what this map is helpful in doing is it will show you all the herd management areas across or within the United States. The pink areas are areas that are no longer managed for horses. They used to be, but now they're just HAs. The darker shaded areas are still managed for wild horses and burros. So I've used this view to show you the relationship of the Carters and the New Year's Lake area in comparison to those around them that people might be more familiar with, mostly meaning the Kygers. A lot of people are familiar with the Kyger horses. So I think it's important that people know that at one point, all the horses were able to roam freely, right, across all these man-made boundaries. So, so just take that into consideration. As far as biodiversity goes and the health of the land, the Oregon State University or Southern Oregon State University created this really cool tool. It's online. It's called the SageCon Landscape Planning Tool. And what you can do is zoom in on an area and figure out the health of that area. So again, I've over here on the right-hand side and outlined in this magenta, that is the New Year's Lake herd area with the Carter Reservoir HMA. And if you can read the key on the side there, what it's telling us is that it's actually a very healthy area in terms of biodiversity. So when the BLM starts talking about doing a roundup, it makes no sense to me because The horses are part of that very healthy area. And in fact, what we don't know is what the horses are contributing and how they're contributing to the health of that area. If you look north up to where all the other herd areas are that you can see on Western Watershed's map, it's just super interesting to me how healthy all these areas are. Okay, another map. This is a timeline map for the BLM. In 1971, the New Year's Lake herd management area was created. So that's this area. It was almost 300,000 acres. In 1985, they decided, no, we don't want to manage that anymore for horses. So they downgraded this to an HA. They said, okay, no more horses will be there. 1985, they created the Carter Reservoir HMA. Having said all that, they did not put fences over here. So the horses still, there is fencing, but they didn't fence off when they cut this down, they didn't add new fencing. So the horses can still travel and they've continued to travel within this whole area. The last gather of the Carter Reservoir horses was 2009. They, at that point, gathered 152 horses. And the thing I'm going to talk about a lot today is that in 225, the BLM adopted this gather plan that they're just waiting for funds to remove the horses. This next slide, it talks about the AML, which is the approved population of the horses, was based on resource monitoring data, which was collected on the HMA by the BLM from 1990 through 2003. And this information I got from the BLM site. And the BLM states the key limiting factors for wild horses within this HMA include number one, limited supply of available public water to support wild horses. Well, as you can see, the public water source is this New Year's Lake, which is in this area that they took away from the horses. The horses are now forced down here. Within the Carter Reservoir HMA, this red area, there is the Carter Reservoir, which is here, but that's a seasonal lake. A year-round water source is this, the New Year's Lake. That's not in their herd area. There are year-round water sources here within the Carter Reservoir herd management area, but guess what? A lot of them are privately owned. So what happened was when people came in and settled the areas, ranchers and people that knew where the water sources were, they, if you could zoom in closely, you'll see there's little white squares on the dot. Those are privately owned areas. So many of the springs are located on, i.e., private land, although they're not necessarily fenced in, and that's so that the cattle that and livestock can access it and also access all the grass that's on our public lands. So most of this is public land where the cattle graze, but the prime riparian areas have a title. Somebody has a title to them. So they say that the horses are using privately owned riparian areas. Also, they say another consideration was the egress of wild horses into an adjacent allotment outside the herd management area. Again, what's happening is that the horses of the Carter Reservoir herd management area, when the water, when it's in, August and the water holes have dried up within their designated area, they walk across an invisible line to get water outside. They egress outside to get water, which is often in water tanks that are kept full for cattle and other livestock. Okay, this is a crazy slide, but this again shows you, just to orient you, this is the New Year's Lake herd management area with the magenta. This is Carter Reservoir Herd Management Area. All these other lines are showing you livestock allotments. These are all the livestock allotments on public lands, mostly public lands. So public livestock raising on public lands permit thousands of cattle on this area. The cost to graze a cow-calf pair on public lands is $1.35 a month. The average cost to graze a cow-calf pair on private land is $20 a month. The number of cattle allowed to graze on public lands are called AUMs, and it's one cow-calf pair is one AUM. However, the number of wild horses allowed are called AMLs, and one AML equals one horse, whether it's a newborn horse or an adult horse. Another thing people don't realize is that less than 2% of meat consumed by Americans comes from livestock grazed on our public land. So all of this public land, who's benefiting from private livestock grazing on there? It's the ranchers, the private ranchers down below. It's not the majority of Americans. All right, here we go. This is the landscape of Carter Reservoir, New Year's Lake area. This first view is a view north of the New Year's Lake. That's a year-round lake. The next one to the right, that's a view west across Carter Reservoir. So this is when Carter Reservoir dries up. Like I said, it's seasonal. There may still be some water holes back in there, but it's really beautiful, even now with all the wildflowers. And in the background, you'll see towards the west, those are the snow-capped mountains of the Warner Mountains. In the bottom left, this is on the eastern side of the herd management area. This is rim rock, typical rim rock, and I go out there frequently. I see horses all around here. They're pretty rugged. And then down here, we have Surprise Valley view east of Sand Creek, which flows from the Hayes Wilderness Range in Nevada, and it flows down into Surprise Valley. Here are some pictures I took over the winter, just showing you how these horses thrive. They can eat, they find food, they're happy. This is a water hole that's frozen in the winter, but they find water. There's hot springs down in the valley, so often they'll come down to the valley to drink. This is some of the flora I've photographed. If I'd had more time, I would have gone in and labeled everything, but I didn't. But one thing to note is I find mushrooms out there at certain times of the year. It's really beautiful. I encourage people to come out and visit it. Here are some of the wildlife fauna. We've got all kinds of migratory birds. You've got multiple raptors. You've got some endangered, threatened species. Red-billed crane. Forgetting. We've got the burrowing owl somewhere. There's a burrowing owl. You've got the sage grouse. Surprised to find little frogs out there in the creeks. This guy is a horned toad lizard. Yeah, you got some pretty cool stuff going on. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the horses. These are Carter Reservoir and New Year's Lake horses. They've got these incredible dun markings. These are shoulder capes. They've got webbing on their faces, some of them on their legs. I'm learning the names of the horses, so if anybody can help me, that would be great. As far as I know, this is a red dun with a flaxen mane. This is a light dun with a silverish mane. These are some red duns. They've got zebra stripes on their legs. I think this is a bay dun with the zebra stripes. This I call a light cream dun. Red dun over here. Down here we've got the bay dun with incredible shoulder markings and striping. This one, I believe, is called a Dunalino, which is a combination of a Palomino, but with the Dun genetics. Riparian areas. So back when the BLM made their EA and they said, oh, we got to get rid of the horses because they're damaging the wild, the riparian areas. I went out to document. So this picture was taken this spring before the cattle were released. This is Sand Creek headwaters. This is prior to the cattle being released. This is this fall, once the cattle, after the summer, so now the cattle came in, they were there all summer. This fall, I went back when the cattle left, and this is what that area looks like. Here we have one of the main water holes as you enter the Carter Reservoir HMA. This was this spring before the cattle showed up. At this time, there were hundreds of horses using this water hole. The way the horses use the water hole is they spend most of their day way up on the hilltops all around grazing. Then they take turns. They come down single file, they water, they leave. They don't hang out. They don't pee and poop in the water. Down below, this is a picture taken, again, this is before the cattle were brought out. Down just below that, this is after the cattle left. As the summer progresses, these water holes dry up. These are catchments for runoff from snow and rain. But up in the high desert, they do eventually dry up. But after the cattle leave, you'll see there's cattle dung all over the place. Over on the right, these are two versions of a riparian area. These are holding tanks fed by a natural spring, which has been protected. It's out of the picture, but the natural spring itself is fenced off from the cattle and the horses. And then the water is pumped from the spring to these holding tanks. This is before the cattle were turned out. This is at the end of the summer, once the cattle have come and gone. And if I had a close-up, you'd see there's cattle dung and trampling all over the place. These are just some images of private livestock on our public lands. This is public land, public land. This is that headwaters to Sand Creek, which I think is actually a private land, but it flows into, and this is public land. And I have a video available. It's on my seen and heard of that. One of these cows is just peeing away as the other ones are drinking around her in the water. Public access to the HMA. The BLM, one of their arguments to round up the horses, that they will round up the horses, is they say that they create a hazard on the roadways. Well, this is the southern border of the herd management area. It's also known as California 299 East. So this is leaving Cedarville, California, headed east into the Hayes Range of Nevada. You'll see right here, it says, warning, no services on the next 100 miles. Winter travel not advised. So leaving Cedarville, going towards the herd management area, there's no services for 100 miles. So not a lot of people are using this road in the wintertime. This is, well, as you continue on CA 99 East, and as you cross the border somewhere around here into Nevada, it turns into a dirt road. It looks more like this. It becomes Nevada Road 8A. This is the view looking back towards, looking west, back towards Surprise Valley. You'll see it's not just horses in the road. There's deer, there's cattle. It's all open range. This is in the wintertime. There's no signage for anybody traveling through, letting them know that they're entering a wild horse area. The only signs you'll pass at 55 miles an hour are an open grazing sign and this little horse picture. If you slow down, you'll see that that's a horse. This is the main access point into the herd management area on a 2-track in the wintertime. So if they round up these horses, this is the only way people will be able to see them in the wintertime, unless they hit one on the highway. Because there's no fence to keep the horses. Oh, that's another important thing, is on the main highway, the fence even though the herd management area is everything to the north of the highway, the fence is on the south side of the highway. Therefore, the horses can enter the highway to get hit, but the cattle that are on this side can't enter the highway to get hit. So, an easier thing to save the horses and the drivers to me would be to put up a fence or to slow people down with a lot of signs. There is this very nice area to view the horses right now that was part of the New Year's Lake HA, but now it's no longer within the HMA, which is County Road 18. So if you live in Cedarville, just know that if the BLM has their way, this little road that everybody currently uses to pull over and watch the horses, that's actually not part of the designated herd management area. But this is the two track. This is the easy driving part of the two track. As you go in, it's all volcanic rock. Advocacy goals. I'm just going through this fast because I'm going to be over time. Advocacies. Advocate for public lands managed for wildlife over private industry. Sanctuaries versus wild. I'm afraid that too many advocates are giving up and they're looking to buy private land to pull our wild horses and keep them safe on private land. The issue about that for me is they're not going to be wild because if you have a sanctuary, you've got to use birth control unless you've got the true natural processes in place, including predation and it may not be pretty, but also, competition for resources. It's not going to be survival of the fittest. It's going to be a zoo, basically, just a big zoo. People have to advocate for predators in wilderness areas. It's the only way to allow natural selection. Advocates can document the range. People need to investigate what multi-use is. You'll hear the BLM say over and over, "Oh, we have to manage for multi-use." But what does that mean? How many taxpayers actually benefit from the multi-use that the BLM is managing for? People must know that words hurt. Science recognizes wild horses as native to North America. So should we. Don't use the word feral. The US government calls them wild in the Wild Free Roaming Horse and Burro Act. So, some scientists use the terminology reintroduced native. No advocate should be saying wild horses are feral or that they are non-native, in my opinion. Use open vocabulary. Don't exclude the possibility that wild horses are native. Phrase words to include the possibility that wild horses never went extinct. Because really, we can't prove that they did go extinct. In fact, science is continually updating, showing us that maybe they didn't go extinct. So choose your words wisely. Try to educate others. We are stronger together. Collaborate with other groups with similar goals. And that doesn't mean only wild horse groups. Collaborate with other people that are advocating for public lands, healthy public lands. Recognize that all wild herd areas are unique. So be careful when making statements about managing specific areas. It makes me crazy when people point out an issue going on in Nevada that's overpopulated by humans, or not overpopulated, but where the horses are coming down into neighborhoods. That's not happening up where I am. And so if somebody makes a statement or if a big wild horse, nationally, internationally known wild horse organization makes a statement, a blanket statement about all wild horses and how to manage all wild horses based on what they experience in their specific city, that's not helping. We are stronger together. Avoid rabbit holes. Focus on legislators. They're the ones who can affect and manage, who can affect land management policies. Have educated responses prepared for folks. with scientific backup. Follow the money, take the next best step, and just don't give up. I'm almost done. So the call to action, with all this going on, there has been some legal action taken. I'm not a part of it, but I'm happy that it's been taken. I'm very grateful. So Laura Lee of Wild Horse Education and several other plaintiffs filed a complaint for an injunctive and declaratory relief. I believe, but you can ask Laura Lee and Wild Horse Education about this. I believe this is the case number. And what I found was what they said, and this makes sense, is that injunctive relief, I believe that means, um, a legal injunction command alone will redress the injuries of the proposed plan to gather up the horses. I ask that anybody listening today contact their federal legislators and voice an opinion because we're all tax-paying Americans. And whether you have horses in your state or not, you're paying for what the government is doing on behalf of the wild horses. We all have an interest in these horses. Here's a slide on how to lobby for wild horses. This information is also available on Save Our Wild Horses website. Heather Hellier put this together. It tells you how to contact, and I also put this in the link. And I think that's it. I think that's the end of my thing. So that's it.
Well, thank you. Let me see if there's any questions in the chat. It was a great job. People are saying that. So,
Oh, thank
um,
you. And if people want to unmute or I'm happy to talk to you face to face. Could be easier. It's nice to see familiar faces.
I think people were just saying that they enjoyed the presentation, great documentation. They'd like you to take them out on a tour.
Yeah, I think I left all my contact info and one thing I don't think I said, but I said it in the bio is my hope is to get anybody that's interested in doing scientific research. I would love for somebody to come out, a university or somebody to come out because this is an ideal situation to study wild horses in the true wilderness where there there has been no birth control. They've evolved. And if we could get the injunction on and stop this roundup, it is the perfect place to do a study because we've got wolves trying to come into the area, we've got mountain lions, we've got black bears, we've got biodiversity, and it's a perfect opportunity. I've got gazillions of photos. I track myself every time I go out. I use Theodolite to like it's an app where I can take photos and get the GPS location. So if there's any scientists or universities out there, if you know of anybody, please reach out to me. I've been making contacts in Surprise Valley. There's some wonderful people who care very much about the environment in that area and just lovely people that I know would love to protect it.
So on that note, Craig said that he could do a study with some support. So if you want to reach out to him, and then Linda wants to know, do they state the reason for the reduction on the size? And she wanted to know if she can get your slides.
I'd be happy to share the slides with everybody. I don't know the best way to do that. I could If you want to send me an email, you could also email me. It's Janine Dallow at mac.com. You could email that. But
Or if you
yeah,
want to
Chris,
email them to me, I can add them to underneath your link so people can just grab them from the website if you want.
yeah. So basically the BLM is saying the reason one of the reasons they're saying is because they're over AML. So they had set the AML to 25 to 35 horses, and now the horses are at 400. So the BLM is saying that they have to bring them down to AML, which the AML is ridiculous. And they're saying that they recognize that AML is not good for genetic diversity, that it's going to create bottlenecking. But then they blatantly say that the herd is not unique. So if the horses start bottlenecking, they said that they can bring horses in from any other HMA because they state they're not it's not a unique herd.
Does
I've
anybody
been
else
in
have
many
any other
roundups.
questions? What's the best way for people to contact you if they visit the area?
Oh, you can send me an email, and I am on Facebook. I try to post on Facebook almost every day when I'm up there. I'm traveling right now, but when I'm there, I'm almost every day sending updates. But people just email me.
And what was your Facebook page again?
Seen and heard wild horses. So it's spelled SCENE, and then heard is HERD. Here, I'll write it again. Seen and heard wild. I wish I was better at Instagram, but I'm not. And I have a niece helping me with a web page, but I'm just not very technologically inclined. I'm old.
And what was the acres increased again? Because Linda says it seems like there was a lot taken away.
Yeah, it went from 300 that almost 300,000 acres down to 23,000. And I've been asking the BLM for their reasoning for 2 years now. I've been asking first I started with Craig Drake. He was the head of the Surprise Valley. He put me in touch with Pat Ferris, who's in charge of the wild horses in California and all that. He kept saying he didn't know, he'd get back to me. Then I started asking Kevin Kunkel, who replaced Craig Drake. Kevin says he doesn't know, he'll get back to me. He said, now I have to file a FOIA. So I don't get answers.
Someone else wants to know if you can repeat your email again.
It's my name, Janine. Here, I'll just put it in the chat.
Are there any ranchers in the area that are supportive of the wild horses? Somebody wants to know.
Yes, I would say yes, they are. I substitute teach up there, and it's been an incredible learning experience for me because I grew up on Cape Cod and then spent 20 years in Santa Barbara. And the first week I substituted, I substituted in Santa Barbara for first grade. Up there, K through 12 serves the entire Valley, and there's only 75 students. And so the first week I was there, they had me substitute for the high school science teacher, which she teaches ag. So the entire school, their science program is ag. And so it's been a huge learning experience because the children there are raised, their scientific background is all about how to utilize the land for agriculture. So they approach it with a whole different mindset. But having said that, yes, I believe that there are ranchers who appreciate the horses. And the other thing people aren't aware of is that the ranches are actually a very small um, percentage of the population. They own most of the land, but as far as population, they're a very small percent. They just are probably the loudest um, because I think they have a lot of power in the area. And a lot of their relatives work at the BLM office.
Anybody else have any other questions? Well, thank you very much, Janine. This was very informative, and thank you for letting us giving us a way that we can help. And
Yeah.
yeah, and reach out anytime if you want to talk more and however we can help too. So let
All
us know.
right. And thank you so much for the opportunity. Thanks,
Th-
everyone.
Thank you, and thank you, everybody. We'll be back Friday with another presentation, and then next weekend again. So we'll also be updating our website this week with more presentations. So thank you, everybody, and thank you, Janine, and have a good night.
Thanks. Bye-bye.